That's really a fantastic introduction. So to begin with, I have to say that again, this proposal that kind of came to us and we nurtured it. The first thing that I'd like to share is the intellectual contributions of all the authors. That's really highly appreciated of what they did, particularly during the pandemic-stricken year. What they did is really highly appreciated from us. And we have authors from almost so basically four continents and kind of encompassing 70% of geographic size. And if I look into the population, then probably 70 to 75% of the population size, and maybe the economic impact would be close to 60% of the global GDP. So that's where we kind of got the idea. Now, I will definitely go to the idea, the Belt and Road Initiative, and I will share a few slides, and then we will kind of talk about it as well. So the first thing is, guys, this is the illustration. So this is Dr. Mukherjee here, Dr. Datta is here, and I believe Professor Bellamy is here as well. So we are the co-editors of this book, and the book, this is a pre-launch right now, and definitely by the end of July, we are expecting the book to be published. So this is the illustration. The illustration idea came from my brilliant co-authors, the co-editors, I should say. And I mean, as you can see, there is actually a space station there, which is the Tiangong space station by China. And then there is the Chinese Dragon. Now, why is this one important? Why are we talking about the Belt and Road Initiative? Why are we suddenly saying, okay, the authors have gave us fantastic articles and say we need to publish the book right away? The reason is, guys, because, and there I will deviate a little bit. I'll talk about the background of the book, of what got us interested, how we got interested in the book. So what happened was, which we all know, by 1990s, there was a spectacular growth that was happening in China. And I'm talking about the economic growth, which is like a 10% economic growth that was happening. And for the last 3 decades, they maintained that growth. So what happened because of that growth is the unipolar world that happened after the downfall of Soviet Union. Now that is becoming more and more, again, after 30 years, more and more kind of a Cold War scenario, in a sense that it's becoming more and more bipolar. As it's becoming more and more bipolar, China, which as its new economic strength and kind of political strength as well, definitely the military strength too, is coming into the global stage way and way more. So that's what is actually causing the Belt and Road Initiative. The idea came from that thing. The Belt and Road Initiative was launched by President Xi, the Chinese president, and back in 2013. And it's called the Belt and Road because the belt is basically, it's kind of evoking the ancient Silk routes, and the road is the maritime strategies that's attached to it. As I was mentioning to you, it's really like the 70% of the world's population, 60% of the world's GDP. So the Belt and Road Initiative, which is a big, ambitious project by China, that's really something which will define 21st century for the better or for the worse. We don't know that. And that's why the authors are contributing, because that's where the authors are actually making the pros and cons of it as well. Chinese investment is huge in that case, definitely in the Belt and Road Initiative. And by 2027, the estimation is $1.3 trillion will be kind of invested by China. And if you think about the Chinese investments, the banks, say the New Development Bank, they're all, or Asian Infrastructural Investment Bank, they're all headquartered in Shanghai. So basically, it's China's project that way, guys. I'd like to give you the geographic map before we proceed and talk about the book contents a little bit. So the geographic map, as you can see, guys, it's basically connecting China with Southeast Asia, the rest of Asia, Central Asia, Africa, and then to the Europe, continental Europe. And that's where the land part comes in, where it's the ancient Silk Route. And if you look into the sea roads, that's where the maritime part comes in, because we can talk about the Belt and Road, but that's not the objective of this pre-launch. So I will deviate from it. But definitely the maritime part of it is very important, very important in terms of Chinese control, or in terms of other countries losing control because of the Belt and Road Initiative. Again, this is not the topic that I want to talk about today, because that's the book that you have to read. So I definitely talk about the book instead. But if you are interested in the Belt and Road Initiative, I have my YouTube videos. You can look into it. I can share it later on. I actually have presented it before as well, like as a keynote speech as well. So here, guys, the contributions from this book is this one. We think that this one would really look into various facets of this proposed trade initiative and will interest, of course, the academicians, we are, but the practitioners as well, because it will have huge implications for the policymakers. So China and its relationship with its neighbors, the political and economic effects of this initiative, and definitely from the academic standpoint, it's going to be very important as well, looking into the international trade theory, and how this will be formulated, and so on and so forth. So the contributions are huge from this book, guys, and I would highly request all of you definitely be there at the time of launch. I'm sure Dr. Datta will send an email out, and then later on, if you get a chance to read the book, that would be highly appreciated. The part one of the book is basically, I kind of delineated it. We kind of delineated it. I and my co-editors and I. So chapter one was written by yours truly, and then again chapter two is by Professor Bellamy, and then chapter three by Professor Paul. These three chapters. Why this is part one, guys? Because these three chapters basically overview of the Belt and Road Initiative is given. My chapter is about the Belt and Road Initiative. I spent much of my time in the land routes. The next two chapters, which is the Chris Bellamy and so Chris Bellamy and Professor Paul, they actually looked into the maritime strategies. And I can tell you, both chapters, the maritime strategies, those are really the jewel ones. You have to read it multiple times. It's fantastic. I'm not stating it just because I'm the editor. Maybe I have some biasness, that's for sure. But definitely, I'd like you guys to read it. Then part two, which is the perspectives from the other Asian countries. And there we have Chakraborty and Lobo, who looked into Indian exports in South Asia. Then Huda, Saha, and Kabir, who looked again into South Asia and the Belt and Road Initiative. And we have Barua and Salonke, who looked into the Belt and Road Initiative and the relationship between China and India. Now, China and India have, I'm sure you know that they have a tumultuous Himalayan border, which is always, there are some issues going on, which is why probably in South Asia, for China to get some foothold, it's very important that the Sino-India relationship gets better and better, because otherwise it might be really a kind of a troublesome affair at that point in time. I think part two definitely describes all these political nitty-gritties, the nuances, and all these economic issues very, very carefully. So I'd like you guys to look into it. Once again, that's our part two. And part three is when we look into the regional perspectives. Before going to part three, I will show you a diagram of why part three is very important one. It's because the Chinese loans to Africa, whether that's debt trap diplomacy, overseas lending to Africa, is something of a big concern of the economists and of the policymakers. As you can see, this is the Chinese dragon, and Chinese dragon is really lending out to African nations. But because of this lending, guys, there are some issues that's coming up in terms of
Did we lose him?
Controlling the institutions, that they're controlling the military bases, and so in looking into the impact of, I'm sorry, did someone say something?
We lost you for a moment, but you're back.
Okay. So I'm sorry, did you see this one, guys? Did you see this diagram already, or there is an issue there?
No, we saw the diagram. We lost your voice.
Okay, I'm sorry. Let's see. That's something of so again with technology, maybe my internet connection got something. So Africa is so very important from the Belt and Road perspective. And if you look into it, in a sense that Chinese overseas lending, Africa is actually receiving a huge share of it. And that's a concern, because that way, indirectly, China can have control over these nations, particularly Congo, Djibouti, Zambia. And I kind of listed these three out here, guys, but you can list way more as well. But that's where Africa is so very important from the Belt and Road perspective. And why am I saying so is because our chapter 7, so chapter 7 from Professor Brathwaite talked about the projects in Africa. which definitely dovetailing chapter 7 is what we got chapter 8, which is from Du Fang and Zhang, which is China's overseas lending, which again is something so very exciting because those two are intertwined that way. And then chapter 9 talks about the Central Asia and Europe, because if you think about the land route, as I was mentioning of the Belt and Road Initiative, it's very important. Central Asia is very important from that standpoint. And then going to Caspian Sea and then going to continental Europe. So we tried to cover through this book almost all the regions as much as possible. And we really think that in conclusion, that we actually have very nice articles, very nice chapters that are very coherent that way. And that will increase the extraordinary appeal of this book to the audience. Now, I have to say one thing, and I actually don't know whether I had mentioned that to Dr. Datta, that after the Belt and Road Initiative, by 2017, China already were talking about the digital Silk Road. By digital Silk Road, it's about huge investments of China on artificial intelligence, robotics, and so on and so forth, the gig economy, and so on and so forth. And the fact is, digital Silk Road is something that China is doing right now, and huge investments are happening. In fact, today I just saw an article where China is, through vaccine diplomacy, is going into the digital Silk Road, which is like the 5G expansion in Europe and elsewhere, and so on and so forth. So digital Silk Road, which is again a wing of Belt and Road Initiative, that could be probably, Dr. Datta, now this is coming to you, that could be probably our volume 2, because I think that will again cause enough interest among the policymakers and the academicians and also the practitioners. So a volume 2 might be there. I am not announcing it right now. Dr. Datta is the one. I'm just throwing it as an option that could be there maybe a couple of years down the road. So that's what it is, guys. This is the book, will be launched pretty soon. And I'll pause here because I'd like to see if Dr. Datta wants to share about the possible dates and so on of the launch and so on and so forth. Thank you.